Okay. So, lowest of the low and behold, who does Sophie Kargman recruit to direct our independent project now that I've been destabilized, now that I'm getting like Alfred Hitchcock gaslit, just in general, as an existence, now that I've been like subtly like decentered in my yoga practice and my general perceptions of reality. Who does Sophie Kargman recruit to direct our independent project but Justin? And the other layer of psychological warfare that was deployed against me in this is that Justin had set me up for this kind of complacency and this sense of secure ego by like giving me all that praise, giving me all that, you know, the watercolor and all that, which I was never comfortable with, and that's not the influence I ever want to have over anyone. But it was just, I didn't know how to create a protective aura between myself and that kind of behavior. So I didn't really know how to process that stuff, you know, whether people mean it genuinely or they're, as it was in my case, using it to weaponize against me and make me complacent in order to like kind of set me up for like a little, you know, a little bit of a decline in my performance relative to what I was capable of. I didn't know how to process that stuff in a way that, you know, I'm not looking like an asshole. So that's really important to learn to do. It's an unfortunate political necessity of being basically in any kind of working environment. People can do that to you, but I think especially for young actors where you get disproportionate praise and attention in work that is really a very like private artistic process, and you need to reconcile those two worlds or you'll be driven crazy or people will get you to fuck up. So I had this sense of complacency that Justin was like my advocate. And so when Sophie, it wasn't conscious, it wasn't, you know, looking for unfair advantages. It was just, I think that was part of Sophie and Justin's strategy and that they were working together. So Sophie recruited him to direct our independent project, or she got me to recruit him. And so it turned out like I was, you know, they kind of like subtly like discouraged me from feeling I really needed to be at all the rehearsals, and prioritized Sophie's work for that, as part of the longer game plan of, you know, Sophie kind of like helming the project away from me having the preparation time I insisted from the beginning that, you know, was really, really going to be necessary in the festival. So another crazy component of this, and I don't know if this was a planned part of the Black Ops or just, you know, some idiot at acting school who was in his early 20s, but the apprentice who again had been storied to me as having, you know, stolen Jenny's boyfriend in college at Carnegie Mellon and like traumatized her, was also in a open relationship with this guy who had also come to the festival with her. And he was, after he saw me do a good performance, because prior to that he like didn't notice my existence and I didn't care, but like he suddenly started like looking at me with like a wide eyes transfixed like stalkery stare, which, you know, we all have that stare when we have a crush on someone in our early 20s and like we don't understand like social protocol yet. But he would approach me and be like, don't you feel this between us? I was like, no, I really don't. Like, it's just you. I was like, it's just you feeling it. I don't feel it. He's like, you don't feel it? I was like, no, I don't. I was like, I'm surprised you feel it, yet I don't feel it. And that's what I said. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I understand what it is to feel what you're feeling right now about someone. I was like, but I don't feel it myself towards you. It's just you telling me you feel it. And I'm just very surprised because I thought, you know, usually that's if you're feeling it, the other person's feeling it and I'm not feeling it. And you know, we were both actors, so ultimately like that information shouldn't offend an actor. Like, it's certainly hurtful, but we're actors and we use our pain for our work. So it's all ultimately like it's all ultimately like a net gain when we're discussing our emotions like that. So I was just telling him that, and after the festival he was like, can I get your address to like write you letters? I was like, okay, you can write me letters if you want. So he wrote me like a few random letters. I don't know if he was just sort of, you know, somebody in their early 20s going through like unrequited love. I'm certainly no better myself. Then again, I have been targeted by real honey traps, you know, to my credit. So you can't always factor in like behavior like that from my past into what would have organically occurred in my personality, because again, I'm targeted by a black ops. So some of this psychological warfare does not represent how I behave in an organic environment. And even while targeted by a black ops, my conduct is like superior to most people who just the way they act normally. Basically, yeah, he wrote me some letters, and I'm wondering, like, I think he went to Carnegie Mellon as well with Tro, the apprentice, who, you know, had this sort of cross narrative with Jenny. So it's like now Tro's, you know, open relationship man is like, you know, telling me he feels like a unrequited love for me, and I'm getting blamed for like Jenny's hookup, and I'm not doing shit with either of these guys. So it's like these actresses get to be like the martyrs in the story of me being falsely portrayed as like sending my spirit out to like steal people's man, when I literally don't care about either of these people in any emotional romantic way. It's like they're just my fellow ensemble members and company members, and that's it. Like that's, so I'm getting, it's like it's a, like, why these two actresses who have this storied, you know, narrative, and now both of their festival men are focused on me. It's like, and I have no intent. That's not why I'm at the festival at all. And why was I just like, was even like Tro's boyfriend, like open relationship kind of putting attention on me, was that even also part of the black ops, or was he just sort of like you know, actually just experiencing a weird actor crush thing? I don't know. Like, I'm just shocked that people in as young as undergrad can be recruited for like black ops PI type of work of that kind. I'm not sure. I mean, really, like, if you're in an acting company, an art situation, there needs to be a contract that says you cannot get hired by a PI firm to target an actor in your class, in your company, in your group. I mean, that's unacceptable. And I want minimum, any wages anybody got paid to do that, I want minimum that paid to me, plus the interest that would have accrued for like the past, you know, amount of time. And plus inflation for however those wages would have increased, because I was financially struggling at that festival. and afterwards. So, I'm just throwing that out there, like, if you were hired as a PI in any show, any class, any festival, any company with me to spy on me and you got paid for damages, I should minimum get that money plus interest, plus adjusting for inflation and any wage increase that has occurred since then. And then maybe I'll just still decide I want to sue you anyway. But minimum, just send that to my Venmo right away. Only if you spied. If I'm wrong, don't worry about it. I'm not trying to set up an environment of McCarthy-esque paranoia here. It could be totally wrong. And this is perfect for, you know, a play or something if I'm wrong. But anyway, so yeah, it's hard to know, like, maybe Justin was the only PI in this situation and he knew the T on Jenny, the T on Trove, the T on Kevin, and he spun this web to somehow manipulate all of them into this kind of behavior. But Jenny touching me during yoga class was really precise, almost too precise to not be part of the Black Ops. When I think back to interactions I once had with a Scientology staff member, I don't know if it was a random staff member or if it was somebody recruiting me for the Sea Org at the end of high school right before I left for Tisch, but I remember one staff member saying, you know, we actually do, you know, yoga theoretically, that is, because once I asked them, I was like, I do yoga, is that like in conflict with Scientology? And they were like, well, it's kind of like our competition. I was like, what? Competition? And she was like, yeah, like technically, like you could look at them as like stealing our business, you know, because we're offering like similar things, like, and you know, somebody might decide they want to buy yoga classes instead of a Scientology course. I was like, but yoga is like physical, it's exercise, like you've got to do physical exercise. And she was like, well, you know, like there's different, you know, she's like, yeah, like yoga could be like business competition for Scientology. And this was one staff member, but I think back to that when I think about the other times I was weirdly like Black Opsed to discourage me from yoga class. Okay. So there's other narrative threads that come out of Williamstown. And unfortunately, they do, I have to say, include the possibility that Kathleen Turner was recruited to Black Ops me at Tisch, as well as to leverage the career of a classmate, Celeste Arias, juxtaposed with falsely orchestrating like my decline and my attempts to graduate with an agent being sabotaged. But that's for another video. So let's get back to yoga. Another bizarre yoga class Black Ops happened in the summer of 2015. I had signed up for this like super discounted like summer discount at this wonderful yoga studio. It was actually the first studio where I took a restorative yoga class for the first time and came to understand yoga, not just for its merits of cardio and exercise and like balanced, you know, physical strength building, but also as a way to achieve deep restorative benefits from these minimally strength building yoga positions, you know, because a lot of Americans get introduced into yoga just as, oh, I'm gonna sweat and, you know, try to have a nice butt. And for actors, it's the stretching is a huge benefit. because the stretching allows so much more access to your vocal and emotional instrument as a performer right off the bat. But the summer of 2015 was when I realized the amazing variations of yoga that are not about like this American ideal of like cardio and exercise and actor instrument, but the deep restorative stretches that look like you're literally doing nothing, but it's anything but. So I signed up for this very discounted student special in the summer of 15 while I, at this yoga studio I just walked past on the street, while I was walking to my rehearsals at the New Ohio Theater, where I was in a show that I'd been a part of the workshops for 2 years, that was now performing, its run at the New Ohio Theater. I was doing this for my acting, to just get everything I possibly could to give to my performance in the show. I remember, and I was signed up online. Somebody must have at that point, this was before I published anything about Scientology, but I may have been getting still, somebody must have been monitoring my accounts, my locations, possibly spying on me through my phone, not necessarily like fair gaming me, because they were just monitoring me. But there was this one class, it was right before, it was like a class I took the day of one of the performances at New Ohio Theater. I was playing Philippa in Radian Bloom's The Upper Room, and I'd been developing that role with them in that show for since February of 2013. A lot of black ops activity took place against me during that time, surveillance activity, and I took a yoga. I was going to the studio like as much as I could because it was amazing, and I had this special like discount where I could go like as many times as I wanted for the week without, and it would cost the same. So I was trying to get everything I could out of it. And this one class, I laid down my yoga mat, and right before class was starting, I ran out to use the restroom. I come back in. Everybody's in the first pose. There's a woman on her yoga mat on top of where I could have sworn I had put my own yoga mat. And while she's just in her pose, I just discreetly flip up the corner of her mat, and I do see that my own mat is underneath. Like, it was my personal mat. It had my name written on it in Sharpie, and the name was facing up. It wasn't even the same mat as the studio provided. So it was like, there's no way she could have mixed it up into thinking it was just like a pad for any student to use. So I'm like subtly just like pawing at the corner of her mat to just check, am I crazy? Is my mat elsewhere? And the yoga teacher walks up to me really swiftly, and she's like, excuse me, because she thinks I'm like a weirdo disrupting someone's practice. And I'm like, oh, I think this is my yoga mat. And then the woman's like, oh, I didn't know it was your yoga mat. I just wanted to be next to my friend. I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm thinking she'll pick up her mat and move as you would if you accidentally put your yoga mat on top of someone else's yoga mat and started doing yoga. And she was like, well, can I be next to my friend? And I like looked up at the teacher like, what should we do now? Like silently. And the teacher's like, oh, okay, set up here. So she just sets up a different yoga mat like for me, and it's fine. It was just a little weird. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but it could have been like a subtle troll, because I was at that time going through my internal lesbian awakening, and I was Googling all this stuff about like erasure, like lesbian erasure. And I'm like, is the woman literally trolling lesbian erasure by like literally erasing my yoga mat with her yoga mat and then doing yoga on top of it? Because shit like that happens to me with this Black Ops. Like taking a concept that I'm deeply like processing and literalizing it in like a trolling, insulting way. And I think she could have been doing that. Like she could have literally, it could have been the spy handler that sent this woman to stalk me at my yoga class was literally assigning her the task of committing like erasure by like putting her yoga mat on top of my yoga mat like the minute I left the room and like doing yoga on it. I'm just wondering, you know, might that have been what happened? We'll never know, unless this woman sees this video and gets in touch with me to like clarify, you know, just maybe even do an interview. But one more crazy thing that happened at this same yoga studio is after the run of the show ended, my little yoga discount special for the month at that studio was also wrapping up. And I agreed to go for the weekend with a cast member who may or may not have been like a Slovenian spy, we don't know, to like this little camping hike for the weekend. And I don't know if I also mentioned to her, oh, I'm going to yoga class today, the day before the hike or something, but I went to this yoga class at the studio where a very beloved teacher who had a following all throughout the city, who had actually, when I first encountered his classes, he was teaching at a studio where I was work studying at the time, right before I actually started the job that led to this true crime dark humor memoir. I noticed he was on the schedule at this other, you know, very highly respected studio. And so I was like, oh my God, I have to go to his class. I literally haven't like been to his class in so long. I can't wait. Like, I'm so happy to see he's like developed such a following all over the city, you know, even more than what he already had. So I was like, I have to go to his class. He's so amazing. I went to his class. It was very crowded because he's just so popular. And then I signed up for his class again at the same studio. It was like the last day of my discount, right? And something very weird happened. Okay, so this popular teacher, you know, big following all over the city, I signed up for his class. I show up. There's a substitute teacher. the substitute teacher says, you know, my friend is not coming in today. I'm substituting for him. He leads the class. Teachers, they come with their stories, their mantras, their narratives, that they tell the class to, you know, guide the theme of the class, or, you know, sometimes inspirational stories. It might not be about their personal life. It might be about some other figure. But you know, usually teachers, usually some of the greatest teachers they may add a narrative component to their class, or they may not. It really depends on the class and the teacher. It can vary, it can change. But this guy, I'd never seen him before. He was just, you know, I'm not like, I don't know, I hardly, you know, in a perfect world, I'd have a regular, consistent membership, you know, at a great yoga studio, but I don't know all the teachers or everything. But this guy was just, he just was substituting for this super popular teacher. I don't know if the teacher assigned him as the substitute or the studio did or what, but this teacher, you know, he tells a story where he says, you know, I was an inmate and yoga had a huge impact on my journey, healing from the experience of being in the carceral system and the experiences that led to my being incarcerated, and that is why I'm a yoga teacher. And you know, it's all in that didn't, you know, nothing about that bothered me at all. At the time, I was actually being honey trapped by someone who was either for real or as their undercover honey trap persona, was deeply invested in prison reform activism. And so I was totally just open to everything, right? And, you know, so this guy, while we are bent over in this pose where you stand with your legs like 3 feet apart, and you do a forward bend to like release your hamstrings and your lower back, or maybe we were bent over. I don't know if my feet were together, if my feet were apart. He comes around, he wraps his arms around where my body is bent, right? So if these are my legs and this, like, if my thumb is my torso and my pointer finger is my legs, he comes and he wraps his arms around this part to squeeze my torso and my legs together as much as possible, right? The class, at the beginning of the class, the teacher says, if you don't want to be touched, please let me know, if they plan on going around and giving you adjustments. This was, in general, I was very accustomed to teachers adjusting my body, and I'd never felt violated in a yoga class. I'd always felt it was very technical. There was no overtone of creepiness, and I also felt that I was very good at telling the difference, you know, between like a teacher giving you a very technical physical adjustment versus like a creepy person in day-to-day life accidentally touching you at work or something like that. Like, I felt I had a very good sense of this. So I kind of felt his hugging this part of my body was quite, well, I was like, what? I was like, it raised some questions for me, but the real problem was it gave me fucking back spasms. And I woke up the next morning with like, I had to just lie on a hard floor for like a day or two, and I had to tell this actress, I can't go to the camping thing with you, I'm having back spasms. And I am like thinking, yes, prison reform activism 100%, but also it's also real that, you know, the guy in this book who's accused of like 99 counts of sexual assault in the Supreme Court also has a son who is currently in jail for murder. And you know, there are things in jail called gang members, gangs, organized criminals who can literally, you know, hook up with their friends on the outside and get them to do things like this to people. So, or he was just, you know, not so far on his healing journey to the point where he should be touching people and giving adjustments like that in yoga class. But just the way things have been going with my black ops, I'm wondering, is this dude, you know, does he owe somebody a favor on the inside? Is he, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know. I don't know why. It was terrible. And so there you go. So you've got to ask these questions in true crime. You can't, you know, you can't just assume the best. We have to wonder, was this yoga teacher simply not far enough on his healing journey to be touching people in class? Or was he literally like maybe doing a favor for a friend of my boss's son? Or, you know, maybe like a low-level organized crime foot soldier, you know, joined up with Scientology and they want to give back to their new church. I don't know. But it is a question. It cannot go unasked. No detail is too small. And this detail was pretty big. You know, I had back spasms for an unfortunate day or two. And unfortunately, that's not the first time that this multi-interest black ops may or may not have targeted me with attempts to induce various injuries, which is also a subject for another video. But that is all of the yoga lore that I have to share for the time being regarding my black ops. Just keep it in mind when you're in class.